I've always been drawn to abandoned places. Not because of the adrenaline, but because I'm looking for them, the things that people leave behind when they run away. Dolls with burnt-out eyes. Diaries with charred pages. Keys to houses that no longer exist. But the old Eclipse Mall was different. He didn't want to be found. My partner Lex and I climbed through a hole in the fence. Rusty spikes tore his jacket, and the wind howled through the empty windows as if the building were breathing. There are broken shop windows on the floor, mannequins without faces, posters with 90 singers. The air smelled of mold and something sweet like rotten honey. Look, Lex pointed the flashlight at the wall. Someone spray painted. They're still here. We went up to the 3rd floor where there used to be a cinema. The screen is torn, the chairs are piled in a pyramid. And then I heard it, a child's laughter. It's spot on, like a radio with dead batteries. Don't, Lex backed away. It's a trap. But I was already following the sound. I found a security room around the corner. On the table is a cup of dried coffee, a calendar from 2003, and a pink children's sneaker. It's clean, like it was bought yesterday. Lex was gone. His scream broke the silence. There's someone here. I rushed down the escalator. The steps were sinking under my feet. In the food court, Lex was on his knees, clutching a Polaroid to his chest with trembling hands. The picture shows a girl about 5 years old wearing the same sneaker. On the back is the handwriting, "Save Sarah." They're in the walls. Where did that come from? I grabbed his shoulder. Someone threw. He pointed to the ventilation grate. There. We removed the grate. There are dozens of Polaroids in the mine. It's all with Sarah. The first one shows her eating popcorn at the cinema. The last one shows him sitting in the dark, hugging a bloody bear. Dates, every 13th, 2003 to 2023. We have to go, Lex panted. It's someone's damn vault, but I was already climbing into the mine. There around the bend, I found a diary. The pages are covered with children's handwriting. 13.10.2010, the uncle in black brought the food. She says mom's coming soon. Liar. June 13th, 2020. They're crying behind the wall. I can't find them. And a photo. Today's one. I'm in the parking lot of the Eclipse. I'm wearing the same jacket. Lex tugged at my leg. Run. They're coming. Figures emerge from the darkness. Trio. In black overalls with lanterns on their heads. One carried a crowbar, the other a sack. You shouldn't have found this, said the third. The voice is like the creak of an unoiled door. Now you are part of the collection. We ran through the ruined pirate ship attraction. Lex stumbled, fell on the rusty bolts. They caught up with him in seconds. A sack on the head, a blow to the knee with a crowbar. His scream was cut off as they dragged him into the elevator shaft. I hid in the cinema, trembling behind the stage. They were looking for me, with the dogs. But not real ones, mechanical ones, with red eyes and steel jaws. We know you're here, the voice echoed through the hall. Sarah needs a girlfriend. A video flashed on the screen. Lex is tied to a chair. A man with scissors bent over him. Choose one, his eyes or yours, said the voice. I ran to the exit, but all the doors were sealed. There's a new inscription on the wall, welcome home. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked it up. Look at the ceiling, a whisper. She was standing on the balcony. Sarah, in a pink dress and sneakers. Lively. Help me, she threw the rope at me. They'll kill us both. The dogs jumped out from behind the screen. I climbed the rope, feeling the steel teeth tearing at the soles of my feet. Sarah grabbed my hand. They've been holding me for 20 years. You're the first one who found it. The wall shuddered behind her. A hatch appeared. There's a room with monitors. On them, Lex, me, and hundreds of others. Live broadcast. Run. She pushed me towards the window. And tell me, or they'll make you an exhibit. I broke the glass, jumped into the fire escape. Black figures were already running from below. I'm writing this in an abandoned gas station right now. Sarah gave me a flash drive. There's a video on it. Lex is in the same room. There's a calendar on the wall behind him, October 13th, 2023. 2 days later, he looks at the camera and whispers, "Don't come. This is low." A shot rang out from the speakers. A gunshot echoed through the speakers, and the screen went blank. I yanked out the flash drive, as if it might explode, and rushed to the exit. The gas station was empty, but the smell of gasoline and fried meat hung in the air. A corner of paper was sticking out from under the counter. I pulled out the menu of the Eclipse Cafe with children's drawings on the back. Sarah, Lex, me. We were all drawn in red marker with crosses instead of eyes. It was already getting dark outside. I got in the car, but the engine wouldn't start. There was a flash of movement in the rearview mirror as a pink sneaker disappeared around the corner. Sarah, I shouted, getting out. The answer was a child's laughter, the one from the cinema. I ran after the sound, stumbling over broken bottles. Around the corner of the garage, I found a door in the floor. A rusty handle, a chain with a lock. There's an engraving on the lock, 13. Inside is a basement filled with monitors. There are recordings from the Eclipse cameras on the screens. Lex is in the room with the calendar. His hands are tied behind his back, but he's alive. There are new inscriptions on the wall behind him. They are everywhere, and find room 13. I heard a creak. Sarah was standing behind him. She was holding a pair of scissors in her hands. "You're not leaving," she whispered. They implanted a chip. They're listening, watching. She unbuttoned the collar of her dress. There is a spider-shaped scar on his neck. There was something metallic pulsing under the skin. "Help me cut it out," her voice was shaking. "Or they'll kill us like they did my parents." I took the scissors. My hands were shaking. The first incision, blood gushed onto the floor. She didn't scream. The chip turned out to be the size of a coin with an antenna. She fell to her knees. Quickly, I hit the chip with a rock. Sparks burned my fingers. Sarah vomited black liquid. "Room 13, she grabbed my hand. "It's all there." Engines whined outside. Black SUVs surrounded the gas station. "Run through the tunnel." Sarah pushed me into the dark passage. "It leads to the elevator shaft." I crawled, scraping my knees on the concrete. Shots rang out from behind. A woman's scream. Then silence. The tunnel led to the Eclipse elevator shaft. A key with a tag hung on the wall, 13. The elevator creaked as it descended by itself. There are mirrors inside. Dozens of faces were reflected in them. Lex, Sarah, strangers, all with chips around their necks. The door opened into a room with white walls. There's a dossier on the table. My photo. Signature, candidate 13. Suitable. A camera beeped in the corner. I walked over. On the screen is Lex, chained to a chair. Behind him is a man in black. "Congratulations," he said. "You have passed the selection. Now you are an observer." He had a chip in his hand. "That's the one. Do you refuse?" He put a gun to Lex's temple. "Choose one." The phone on the table started blinking. "Sarah. She's alive." In the background is a room with the inscription, Exhibit 13. "Don't trust them." Her voice was interrupted by a rasp. "This is..." Shot. The screen went blank. I grabbed the dossier and ran. But the elevator was already going up. "They are in it." The elevator hovered, its doors opened just enough for me to see them. 3 figures in black overalls. The welders' masks hid their faces, but I could feel their stares. One of them raised his hand, in which he clutched a device that looked like a communications jammer. With a beep, my phone went off. I rushed to the opposite door, slamming my shoulder into the metal. The lock gave way on the 3rd blow. A corridor lit by emergency lights led deeper into the building. There are wires torn from the channels and traces of soot on the walls. The air smelled of burnt insulation. I ran, tripping over cables. Heavy footsteps coming from behind. One of them shouted, "Stop. You don't understand what you're getting into." I turned into a door-marked server room. Inside, rows of old computers buzzed like beehives. A message was flashing on one of the screens, "Surveillance system activated." There are printouts in the folder on the table. Photos, names, dates. Everyone who disappeared in the eclipse. Among them is Lex, labeled as Object 12. My page was empty except for the stamp, Candidate 13. The criteria are suitable. Drowning out my fear, I connected Sarah's USB stick to the server. The files were hacked by the cameras. Corridors flashed on the screens. Black figures were searching the rooms. Mechanical dogs were prowling at the exit. "Voice input is activated," the computer announced. "Where's Lex?" I hissed. The screen switched to an underground laboratory. Lex was sitting in a cage, his face covered in bruises. Next to it is a table with surgical instruments and chips in sterile packages. The program produced a building diagram. The laboratory is at the B3 level. To get there, you need to go through the ventilation shaft behind the wall. I smashed the wall panel with my fist. The metal buckled, revealing a narrow manhole. There's dust and cobwebs inside. I crawled, scratching my elbows, until I heard voices. We will replace the chip with version 4.0. If candidate 13 resists, we will eliminate it. Clinging to the grate, I saw the laboratory. Lex tried to kick down the cage door. A man in a lab coat was bending over him, preparing a syringe with a clear liquid. I jumped down, grabbing a fire extinguisher from a table. The blow to the head stunned the doctor. Lex broke the window and got out, limping. "You're alive." He hugged me, trembling. "They are." They implanted something in my arm. There's a fresh stitch on his wrist. A chip pulsed under his skin. "We need to get out." I handed him the screwdriver. "Hold on." We ran to the emergency exit marked on the diagram. A siren sounded behind him. The red light flickered, illuminating the way through the underground tunnels. Suddenly, Lex stopped, clutching his head. "They are." They're in my head. Voices. His hand jerked, grabbing a knife from a table. His eyes turned glassy. "I'm sorry," he croaked, raising the blade. "They're controlling me." I jumped back. The knife plunged into the wall. Lex fell to his knees, screaming, "Kill me." Before it's too late, black figures emerged from the darkness. One of them pressed a button on the remote. Lex froze, then turned to me, knife in hand. "Run." I managed to read his lips before he attacked. I rushed to the exit, knocking over tables with equipment. The lock on the door gave way after a few blows. The fresh air hit my face. There was a shot from behind. I turned around and saw Lex lying on the floor. The black figures bent over him, one aimed at me. I ran out into the parking lot. Car lights blinked in the distance. He ran without looking back until he reached the highway. Now I'm writing this in a cheap motel. I have Sarah's flash drive, server room recordings, and a chip cut out of her neck. I'll report everything to the police tomorrow, but I know they're coming. A message flashed on the TV, breaking news. A fire in the abandoned shopping center, Eclipse. The reasons are being established. I didn't answer the knock on the door. Even if it's a maid, I pressed myself against the wall, listening to the motel door creak under heavy breathing behind it. The TV continued to crackle. Firefighters found traces of chemicals in the Eclipse. The announcer's voice wavered, as if someone had changed the channel. Ripples filled the screen, and then images appeared. I was in the basement of a laboratory, and Lex was struggling in a cage. "We see you," said a voice from the speakers. "Give me the flash drive, and we'll leave your family alone." Family? I don't have a family. But a woman appeared on the screen, my ex-girlfriend Kate, whom I hadn't seen in 5 years. She was teaching a class, unaware that the camera was watching her through a projector. I pulled out the TV cord, grabbed my evidence backpack, and climbed out the bathroom window. He tore the sheet off the bed, making a kind of rope, and went down to the parking lot. My car was parked in the far corner, but there was a puddle of oil on the front wheels. Sabotage. A black SUV pulled out of the shadows. I ran to the truck with the door open. The cabin smelled of tobacco and coffee. The keys were in the ignition. The engine roared as I stepped off the gas. The chase started immediately. 2 SUVs chased me down the highway, shooting at the tires. Bullets pierced the mirror, fragments dug into the seat. I turned onto a country road, hoping to lose them in the dust. Suddenly, the truck's navigator turned on itself. Voice command, next target, quick stop gas station in 2 miles. On the screen is a photo of Kate tied to a chair in a room with green walls. The gas station was deserted. I went inside, clutching the tire iron. There's a note at the checkout. Leave the flash drive in the freezer, or she'll suffocate. The freezer was humming in the corner. Inside is not a flash drive, but a phone. He dialed the only number. A man's voice answered, "You're late." There was a van with the doors open in the backyard of the gas station. Kate is inside. Her mouth is taped shut, and her eyes are wide with horror. Next to it is a box with a timer, 1 minute and 30 seconds. I cut the wires at random. The timer stopped at 7 seconds. Kate pulled away, gasping, "What?" I asked, untying her hands. "I don't know, but they showed me a video. You're in the Eclipse. You found a room with children's things." SUVs crashed into a gas station. We ran across the field, hiding in the corn. Kate was trembling. I have a chip in my body, like Lex's. They're watching. I examined her neck, and there was a tiny scar under her left ear. It was impossible to cut the chip here. Take me to the river, she grabbed my hand. There's a bunker over there. My father built it for people like me. We walked for an hour until we came across an old hut. Inside there's a generator, computers, a stand with tools. Kate connected herself to the monitor. There is a map with dots on the screen. All the chips. They took me in 2 days ago. They said you stole something important from them. There are thousands of them, she whispered. They're implanting them on refugees, the homeless, those they won't be looking for. Suddenly, Kate froze. Her fingers began to shake as she typed commands. They're coming. Turn me off. Now. I pulled out the cable. She collapsed to the floor, blood streaming from her nose. Thank you, she whispered. Now you know. Destroy the transmitter in the Eclipse. Ease in. Her body jerked. His eyes rolled back in his head. Engines whined outside. I left it in the hut, hidden in a hiding place under the floor. Now I'm going back to the city. The coordinates of the transmitter are in my pocket. He's in the old water tower that you can see from Eclipse. But in the truck's mirror is the same girl in pink sneakers. Sarah. She waves her hand as if beckoning. The water tower towered like a rusty giant, its metal creaking in the wind. I climbed through the hole in the fence, clutching a flashlight and Sarah's flash drive in my hand. It smelled of damp and oil inside. The stairs wobbled under his feet. The steps fell into the void. I found it at the top, under the dome, a transmitter. A black box with flashing lights, entangled with wires that went into the floor. Sarah stood at the entrance, her pink sneakers gleaming in the lamplight. They know you're here, she said. You have 5 minutes. I plugged the USB stick into the port on the panel. The screen vibrated, hacking the system. 23%. Sarah squatted down, took a knife out of her pocket, and started cutting the wires. My father worked for them, she said, her voice trembling. He was building chips, until I realized that they were implanting them in children. Hacking progress, 67%. Footsteps sounded from below. Voices. Check the upper level. Sarah jumped up, pressing her finger to her lips. We hid behind the boxes. 2 men in black jumpsuits passed by, shining lanterns. One of them stepped on a creaking board. I threw a wrench into the opposite corner. They ran towards the sound. Now. Sarah nodded at the screen. 100%. I pressed the button. The transmitter exploded in sparks. Smoke billowed from the cracks. Sirens wailed all over the city. Run. Sarah pulled me towards the sunroof. There's a rope. We went down the side of the tower while the black figures were banging on the door. An old truck was waiting on the ground. The engine started on the 3rd attempt. Where to now? I asked, pulling onto the highway. To the hospital. Sarah took out her phone. Their lab is there. We will destroy the data. All the chips. But I turned onto a deserted road. No. We're going to the cops. I have enough evidence. She grabbed the steering wheel, her eyes blazing. They bought the police. Have you seen Lex? Have you seen Kate? The truck was pulled over to the side of the road. We stared at each other, breathless with rage and fear. Okay, I exhaled. Where's the hospital? She entered the coordinates into the navigator. The building turned out to be an abandoned building on the outskirts. We climbed through the window into the basement. The lab was empty. Computers are smashed. Cabinets with chips are emptied. There were documents on the floor, lists of candidates, reports on experiments. They've moved everything. Sarah collapsed to her knees. We're too late. I held up a piece of paper with a seal. Evacuation completed. The facilities have been moved to Zone 7. Suddenly, the light turned on. People in bulletproof vests with the words cybersecurity came down from above. Put your hands behind your head. The officer shouted. You're under arrest for hacking into government infrastructure. Sarah was pinned down first. She didn't resist, looking at me with sadness. Tell me everything. Even if they don't believe it. I was pinned to the floor. Evidence was stuffed into his pocket. A flash drive, a chip, photographs. This data is enough to start a war, I thought, as the handcuffs dug into my wrists. The trial took place a month later. I was convicted of hacking and destroying property. Sarah was sent to a psychiatric hospital. But before the meeting, the lawyer handed me an envelope. Inside is an article, Massive Failure of Surveillance Systems. Thousands of chips have been deactivated. An investigator came to my cell today. He said that the interested parties were offering a deal, silence in exchange for freedom. I tore up the paper. It's better to be a prisoner here than outside with a chip in your neck.